Hello and welcome to episode 36 of the Jaguar Report podcast. John, you got to check me on this one too. Are we at 36?
I was just about to ask. You said that really confidently, and I'm like 95% sure you're wrong.
Oh, geez. Okay. Maybe
No,
it's
this is
35.
36. There we go.
Of
Hey.
course. See, it's all about confidence.
I, be- I
We've
believe
been,
in you.
yeah,
5%.
right. You just proved me wrong or proved that you don't.
I said 95% of me doesn't believe in you.
Well, all right. We're a little rusty because it's been 2 whole weeks since we did the last podcast
Yeah, and I haven't slept in the last 24 hours because of football Twitter. So
because of football Twitter. Oh,
yeah.
man. I'm not even going to get into that. We'll just keep moving. All right. Over the past 2 weeks, there actually has been a decent amount of Jaguars news and action. They signed five whole free agents, and all of them got a 1 year deal worth Dr. Evil's original asking price. We have running back Dearness Johnson, D tackle Michael Dogby, defensive lineman Henry Mondo, offensive lineman Josh Wells, and offensive lineman Chandler Brewer. I mean, Super Bowl, John? What are your takeaways?
Like these are the types of free agents I think we expected them to sign,
Yeah.
but it's still funny that and they're like, let's go for a year. These are like their new faces. I mean, obviously Calvin Ridley is their big offseason addition, even though they traded for him in November. He's the big
Mm-hmm.
addition, the new face, the big new face to the roster this year. That goes without saying. They've tried for other guys, so they've obviously tried to have a class that maybe doesn't look as Dollar General like this one. But I mean, I think two of the five guys are probably locks to make the 53-man roster. I think Dearness Johnson is a lock to make it.
Mm-hmm.
Just based off what the Jaguars have said they want out of the running back position, this offseason, somebody who can potentially, it's a long season, so somebody who can potentially go in there and be, a stretch starter if injuries ever hit ETN or anything like that. And then also somebody with special teams experience. I mean, Trent Baalke and Doug Peterson have both kind of harped on special teams experience for the backup running back over the last couple of months. And then you look at Snoop Connor last year, and he didn't play a single special team snap. So that immediately kind of tells you that, Dearness Johnson's probably at worst the number three running back on the roster as they enter the offseason program. Maybe he jumps to Michael Hasty. Maybe they add a running back in the draft. I'm still not unconvinced, they won't do it. So I think the running back room is very much still in flux, but I think Dearness Johnson will make it. And then, I mean, what are your thoughts on the Josh Wells signing? A lot of Jaguars fans, had some reactions because he was in Jacksonville for about 4 seasons. He definitely had some down moments, and then he's been in Tampa Bay the last 4 years. They seem to be a lot higher on him in Tampa Bay than people are in Jacksonville. I mean, what were your thoughts about the signing? I mean, I see him as I think he'll be the swing tackle in 2023, and I think
Right.
he's an okay option for swing tackle. The only reason I would ding it, in my opinion, is because they had a better swing tackle in the building in Cam Fleming for a visit, and he, for whatever reason, didn't sign him. But I mean, what are
Yeah,
your thoughts on it?
pretty much exactly that. Like I think between him and Cam Fleming, who like you said was in the building. I mean, Cam Fleming is like used to be like an actually pretty good player, and now he's just past his prime. Whereas Josh Wells has always been sort of a depth piece. Um, but like a swing tackle was definitely a necessary signing. I was writing an article of like just roster holes the Jaguars could fill, and as I was writing it, like they got swing tackle, which is one of the ones that was on my list. And so like at the end of the day, like the difference between Josh Wells and Cam Fleming isn't really that big, and but it was like a good idea to just like round out the room, similar to Dearness Johnson. Like as you said, he brings a good floor with his special teams value, but I mean, we talked about how like the Jaguars really tried to use Jermichael Hasty as a power back last year and ETN a little bit, and like I don't know, I think he could like bring some juice to the offense as well.
Hey, what's your reaction if slash when the Jaguars take a running back in the third round?
In the third round, that late, uh, I'm gonna be like wishing that it was spent on another position. I haven't like paid enough attention to the running back class this year to be excited about taking anyone. Like maybe if Gibbs fell that far, but like I don't know. Like
It's man.
it's like whoever if it's the third round, whoever they take, I'm gonna be like I would have rather gotten someone else. at a
I,
different
th-
position.
I feel like Spears would be interesting, but I mean, they shouldn't take a running back in the third round. But I don't know, man. They've done a lot of homework on this running back class, even
Yeah.
after the Dearness Johnson signing. Like even after they still have hosted running backs on visits. So it's interesting. Then the defensive guys, Michael Dogby, Henry Mondo, neither one of them signed to a significant contract. I don't think either one of them got signed to anything that screams they're going to make the 53-man roster. Dogby, I think, got paid a little bit more, but I mean, he got paid, it's an insignificant, amount in the big picture. Dogby, I'm actually semi interested, in Dogby. I mean, he was tested like a really good athlete. He flashed at times with Arizona, as a backup defensive lineman. Never was used in a lot of stretches. Had time with DeForest Buckner in Arizona. It's just the only thing is, for all of his athletic traits and everything like that, and some of the flashes, he still only has like a handful of career sacks. So, it's obvious they wanted to add an interior rusher this offseason, and he's not one. And like, it's not. No, I mean, come on,
I'm
is he?
sorry, that was just good delivery.
He
He's
he
not one. He's right. You just
he. I think he's a interesting death piece, and he can be a player against the run. But I mean, he has 2-3 sacks in his career.
I mean, I think he's pretty interesting. He came out of Temple, right?
Yeah,
And like he was like one of the guys that like real like draft dudes were like, oh, this guy has a little bit of juice. He might be a sleeper. And then like I don't know, he has like three whole highlights from his time on the Cardinals. So I'm definitely not trying to knock him, and I know you weren't either. But
no. I mean, you know what I'm saying. I mean, I agree with these. I think an interesting ad. And then Mondo, I have zero opinions. I have zero takes.
yeah, he was on the Giants last year and was like rotational guy is like an exaggeration probably.
They'll bring him to
He was like a
camp.
sub rotational guy.
They'll bring him to camp and see what he does. Is basically, and then that's
Right.
what I think about Brewer too. The guard they signed from the Rams, Chandler Brewer.
Mhm.
I I would be lying to you if I told you I knew who Chandler Brewer was before they signed him. I went back and watched a little bit of him. You
You
can,
sicko.
dude. I know. It's April, man.
It is.
There is nothing to do. Work. You got to think like during the season, I'm in the stadium like 5 to 6 days a week, and then during the off season, I'm just sitting here staring at a screen, man. I'm
Right.
going crazy. I've almost done something insane, like get a hobby or something, but. Well, we'll make
That
sure.
would be too wild, John. Calm
Yeah.
down there.
Read a book.
Yeah.
Get the hell out of here.
Learn an instrument. Gee whiz.
Nah, I tried playing an instrument once. Didn't work, but that's neither here.
Once and only once, huh?
Yeah, that's neither here nor there.
I
But
know how it goes.
I mean, Brewer, he's like a decent athlete, but it reminds me of they claimed Wes Martin on waivers around this time last year. And I remember doing a story like 6 or 7 teams like tried to claim Wes Martin, and it was seen as like, oh hey, we got this guy that so many other teams wanted, and then he got cut like halfway through training camp because
Yeah.
he was having a real tough go at it. So that's not to say that will happen in Brewer, but it wouldn't surprise me if by the time mid-August rolls around, Brewer, I hardly know her.
We are on fire today, John.
Heck yeah, buddy. Heck yeah.
Who
Like
was
you
the
said,
other
a bit
guy
rusty.
who was the other guy that the Jags got last year? The Packers guy. Who they traded like a 6th-rounder for him?
Go to 7th, I think.
That
Cole
was a
Van
seventh.
Lannon.
Who is just signed like a restricted free agent.
Yeah, he signed like his tender. So he's back for a 1-year contract. And Bulky talked last year when they traded for him about, how much they liked him in the draft when he came out of Wisconsin and, stuff like that. But let's see, he played 7 pass block snaps last year and allowed 2 pressures and a sack.
Was it against Washington?
Along with a forced fumble. No, Colts.
Mm.
Yeah. I remember that game. That Sheriff's helmet came off for some reason, and he had to come out. So Van Lannon went in, and he allowed like a 3rd down strip set. I think he'll have a chance to compete, behind Sheriff. Him, Brewer, Blake Hance. I know these are all very real names that I'm throwing at you. I think they'll compete behind Sheriff because, for as good as Sheriff is and as good as he was last year, he got banged up as the year went on. He toughed it out, and he was really a warrior. He played every single game for the first time since 2016, and he did that despite being on the injury list for like the last 6 to 7 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But they still need somebody to develop some depth behind him. Left guard, I think, is a position that you have Ben Barch there. You have Tyler Shatley there. You could add a guy in the draft. You could even add a guy in the draft for right guard. But that's more or less how I see the Brewers. So I see the free agent additions as Johnson will be the number 3, maybe number 2 running back, probably number 3. Wells will be the swing tackle. And then the other guys are fighting for a roster spot. And that is your Jaguars 2023 free agency.
There it is. I mean, I would say it's fair to say that none of them are going to impact the draft, right? Like the Ernest Johnson signing, it means like if they don't come away with the draft with a 3rd round running back, they'll be okay. And like Josh Wells is, if they don't come around with the 1st or 2nd round tackle, they'll be okay.
Yeah, and that I think is, the kind of additions you want to make before the draft is, you never want to back yourself into a hole, be like, okay, I'll have to take an offensive tackle in the first 3 rounds. For
right.
Wells isn't stopping you from taking a guy like Darnell Wright in the 1st or DeJuan Jones in the 2nd or anything like that. But you can at least, you don't have to be in a Mayday scenario if you don't find a tackle in the first.
Yeah, you don't have like a lot of pressure or a lot of heat.
Exactly.
Makes the job a little less stressful. I can respect that.
Hey, man. That's the way everybody should operate.
That's the way the world goes around.
Just draft them vibes. That's how Zach Wilson went number 2. Oh man. Well, I mean, overall, like this free agency, period for them, was it about where you expected?
Yeah, I mean, what we're about to get to in a bit, I think, is that like they chased a couple of like higher name free agents. So like the fact that they didn't get anyone for over $1 million for 1 year is like, I don't know, made it like a little bit of an emptier feeling because there was some hope there that they could go after like a Calais Campbell or maybe Darius Slay. There might have been one other name that they were just like seemingly in the running for, and then nothing happened, which is to be expected. But since there were rumors out there, I don't know, it gets people excited.
Yeah. What is it from Blades of Glory? It gets the people going.
Oh man. Oh, I can't believe I don't know the quote.
You look like it's provocative. It's provocative.
You
look like somebody who loves that movie. I thought you were.
I think I only watched it once, but I definitely like could not stop laughing when I watched it. I'm a huge Napoleon Dynamite fan.
I know you are.
And Step Brothers, so yeah, it's pretty much the perfect movie.
I hear you. Good movies. Big John C. Reilly fan. I think overall, like if Trent Baalke could like pick his perfect offseason, I think like one like this would probably, be it, like an offseason where you don't have to spend and you can just re-sign, depth guys. Like I think if you look at last year's offseason and this one, and you want to figure out which one is closer to what Baalke's actual philosophy as a GM is, it's probably this one.
We'll see. I'm excited.
Yeah, are you?
Yeah. I was just trying to segue to the next thing because I feel like it's going to end any minute. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you good.
Do you have to like end this recording and start a new one? Or end this meeting?
Nothing's come up yet.
Oh, nothing's come up. So you want to just keep rolling?
Yeah, let's keep going. I like providing bloopers for the YouTube crowd. Let's keep rolling. Let's go. Give them a
let's do
subscribe.
Next on the docket, Calais Campbell talk. I've got a timeline here for you, John.
Oh yeah,
March 23rd, 2023. Calais Campbell visits with the Jacksonville Jaguars. 4 days later, on the 27th, at the NFL's owner meetings, Doug Peterson says to our guy Demetrius from the Times Union, "It was a great visit with Calais. He's obviously spent 3 years in Jacksonville and helps them get to the AFC Championship game. Guys like that, you cannot pass up an opportunity to at least bring him in and talk to him." And then 2 days later, the Falcons swooped in, big wink, and signed him to a $7 million deal for 1 year with it's all guaranteed and up to $9 million he can make. So Brian Windhorst.
Yeah. What does it mean?
What happened?
He put together like it was like a timeline of the JFK conspiracy. No, I
Well,
mean,
there was just a lot of excitement because,
it
like, I
was.
mean, first of all, it's Calais, who's like the so-called mayor during the 2017 Saxonville season,
God.
and just like the fact that it was a free agent at all. I don't know if they'd signed anyone up until that point. Maybe like the first three signings they had gotten
Yeah,
done.
I think it was. Yeah, I think they had the first three guys already in place. I mean, there was definitely a lot of excitement. I think what Trent Baalke said at the owners' meetings, even more than what Doug Peterson said, showed that they thought they were still in the running, for Campbell. And there's no reason, obviously, to think otherwise. They said they were competing for him and stuff like that, and they would check in on it. And I think it was the next day or so after that Campbell signed with Atlanta.
Yeah.
When you look at what he got from Atlanta, I think it's obvious kind of why he got there. I mean, obviously, great guy on and off the field. He's a leader. He's still a plus run defender. He can give you a few sacks here and there, here and there, as as an interior pass rusher, which is what they need. But he's also the oldest active defensive lineman in the entire NFL. Like he's not one of the oldest defensive linemen in the NFL. He's the oldest one. He's going to be 37 in week 1 or week 2, something like that. So, he's closer to 40 than he is 33 right now.
He was like if Tom Brady played defense and never did anything in the postseason.
Okay, you didn't have to add that part. Wow, that was rude.
Well, I mean, Tom Brady just has done a lot in the postseason. That's all I meant.
Calais Campbell is a family. So
I didn't know that. I'm sorry, Class.
Yeah, no, and Tom Brady doesn't. So checkmate. So, that's more so what I meant.
Yeah. All right, now we're on the right page.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I was just agreeing with you that he's really old is the main point. And like as exciting as it was, and like as much as defensive tackle would have been a nice signing, like it was definitely like an overhyped possibility.
In the politest way, I think it would have been a more impactful signing in terms of getting people excited and happy than actual on the field. Like if you look at like a Madden thing for him for the 2023 season, like top traits, it'd be like vibes, like that'd be what the addition would be, it'd literally be a signing based on vibes and let's all feel good. Like obviously
vibes, height. I don't know what the next one would be, but that's definitely top 2.
He has a lovely voice.
He does have a good voice. All right, well, that's 3 right there.
Yeah, I believe it's a soprano.
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah,
I only played an instrument once.
I mean, I do think though that I don't want to speak for anybody, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Jaguars were probably surprised when he signed with Atlanta. Like it did seem like to me that things are pointing to him, coming back to Jacksonville. But the Jaguars, I don't think well, obviously we know this because he signed with Atlanta, but I don't think they were willing to pay him anything like near what Atlanta paid him.
No. And well, John, did you see that Arthur Blank gave him a personal 40-minute phone call to talk to him about on and off the field impact? That seemed to be a real seller.
I mean, Desmond Ridder was a good selling point, I suppose.
Yep. You said there.
It was funny to me that Calais mentioned signing with a contender, and then that PFT quote came out the other day where he was like, "With Desmond Ridder, if he develops, we can potentially play late in the year."
Okay, guy. Sure.
He's just already he went from I want to play for a contender to
man. Definitely a PR signing for sure.
Yeah. So I didn't see it as big of a loss as other people did. I perfectly understood why people were melting down, but I figured it had to do with the money aspect of it. And once the money came out, I don't think anybody really was that bothered anymore.
No. And it's pretty easy to get excited during the off season. There's just nothing going on.
Yeah.
So
that's the one thing. It would have gotten people excited for an off season that otherwise includes signing a swing tackle and a number 3 running back and some rotational training camp guys. But it was, I think, though, at least a sign from them that they're willing to explore, all options. Even the Darius Slay thing a couple weeks ago, they've at least, it seems like, done their homework on guys. It's just this, like I said, Calvin Ridley is the only move for this offseason. it's almost like they're counting on Trayvon Walker's development to be like adding a whole nother player. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, ideally Devin Lloyd would be the same, but it doesn't seem like they're like as confident or hopeful about that part.
What do you mean? There was a quote about him playing on the edge.
Yeah, there was, but that was like a small part of like a Trayvon Walker story. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
I okay. What do you think about this? Like, I feel like Evan Ingram counts as like a similar part of like the Calvin Ridley edition, where like I don't know, even though it's like doesn't really feel new, he was supposed to be a free agent, and like he got paid a significant deal, and it's had implications on like the cap and the ability to bring in other guys. So like I feel like you can count like bringing Evan Ingram back as like part of the offseason when you're
It,
summing it up.
was he ever really supposed to be a free agent?
I guess that's true.
If he
But
signs
that
if he signs an extension, I'll give that to you. I'd put a little more oomph behind it.
okay. He's still on the team though. It's better like if imagine if he wasn't on the team, then they would have been able to sign some at least one other like decent free agent, but their tight end room would be Luke Farrell and Luke Farrell only.
Hey man, Luke
And that's
Farrell.
what it is after this season right now, I guess is your point. So
I when I posted the video, Aaron Berkshire, awesome photographer, does work, around the NFL with the Jaguars. That video he posted of Trevor's workout. In the tweet I posted, I completely forgot to say that Luke Farrell was there too. They like him, dude. They like him.
well, okay. So here's a question around at the free agency talk. Is there any other positions that you see them like just trying to fill to get in like another decent like body in the room? Like would tight end be one that you think they sign a guy
Yeah,
before the draft, or tight end and edge and corner are probably like the three that come to mind for me.
yeah. I think definitely tight end. I think corner. It would. They could probably enter, like this period of the off season, with this many corners. Like you don't need as many, for the workouts. I mean, right now they have only 3 tight ends on the entire roster. So I mean that's a lot of reps for, Ingram, Farrell. And then you have Garrett Prince, who is an undrafted free agent.
I was gonna say the three tight ends. I forgot
Yeah,
about Prince.
yeah, yeah. So I think tight end just because to give guys like some breaks, but I don't think it'd be anything other than that. But it makes you like wonder if like there's any consideration at all, especially with Rayshawn Jenkins restructuring his contract. If there's any consideration to, potentially adding guys after the free agency period is over, which is like a couple days after the draft. Like it's still free agency, but then signings don't count toward compensatory picks anymore.
Okay.
So, that's on Baltimore.
Yeah, because I figured like there's not really going to be a lot of signings around the league at all up until the draft, like
Yeah.
just because like you'd rather wait until after the draft to like fill the like small needs rather than like
Yeah.
completely like fill out a roster as you're saying if there's already a certain amount of guys at a position group. But
Yeah.
that makes sense too with like the end of free agency. So I guess like maybe 1 to 2 super cheap guys could be added before the draft, but still expecting it to be pretty quiet.
Basically, guys like Chandler Brewer,
Yeah.
etc.
Gotcha. All right. Well, are you ready? It's
Yeah.
draft talk time.
Oh yeah. Let's do it. Let's
All
do
right.
it.
First, we're going to go through an article you posted 2 weeks ago ish. 24 names for the Jaguars to watch at number 24. So in tier one, we've got long shot selections. You want to just like kind of go through it?
Yeah.
So Jalen Carter, Joey Porter, and Broderick Jones and Miles Murphy are guys you think are like you could put them on a list as possibilities, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Like I didn't put Devin Witherspoon on there because I don't think there's any way, he's gonna get there. Or same with like Paris Johnson or something like that. The other guys I could at least see like Jalen Carter, I have no idea where his draft stock is, dude. Like
Yeah.
I have no idea. Like, is he going to go 5 to the Seahawks or is he going to go like middle of the first round? I think he's the best player in the draft, but
Yeah.
I also believe that teams, probably had questions on him probably before all of this, happened. Whether right or not. So, but he would still like if he's at 24, like I don't care. Like anything like simply like you can't not take him if he's there at
Yeah,
24. Like
he's too
there's
good. Like I don't think there's no way he gets out of the like top half for the first round for that reason.
it makes sense if Daniel Jeremiah made a good point where like his agent said he won't visit anybody outside the top 10 picks.
Hmm.
Maybe the Eagles told him like, hey, if you're at 10, we're gonna take you.
Or maybe someone just told his agent that he's a bad interview, so he's trying to limit the interviews.
I like my way more.
All right, well, we'll see. I like just like with like what we know about the NFL in terms of like them continuing to hire like not good humans. I like would be so surprised to see him fall past
Yeah,
10 or 16.
yeah.
Miles Murphy, I feel like would probably be the name that's like most likely to fall among these guys. Would you agree?
I think so, just because he kind of had an incomplete draft process, but man, he had a good pro day for me. Like I saw some people talk about his agility numbers weren't super impressive, but I mean when you consider he's like a base 4.3 base end who's like 270 pounds nearly. I thought he had a really good day. And it, the question with him is, I think he's gonna be solid right away as a pass rusher, as a run defender. The question is, how much more can he go up from there? Just in terms of, his go-to is he's trying to go through guys, and I think it's kind of improved that bull rushes aren't a great move in terms of projection from college to NFL. Kind
Mm-hmm.
of, we saw Trayvon Walker do a whole season
Yeah,
of
that's
bull
what I was about to
rushes,
say.
but I mean his speed to power is impressive. He has probably the best get off in the class. I think he can right away be like probably like a 5 to 6 sack guy. It's just you wonder how many of those pressures he can turn into sacks. But when looking at the rest of this edge class, I think he's like the most complete guy outside of the top
Will
guys.
Anderson.
Yeah, Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson.
Yeah,
I
and
I think
Wilson.
I probably have Murphy as edge three.
Okay. I just feel like he's the name that I've seen of like just like randomly slipping in mock drafts for like not really like a big reason other than just like I don't know, maybe just like seeing his name so much that it's like boring now because I feel like he's one of the few guys that's like always been in the top 10 of mocks for months now.
Yeah, and I mean he had a hamstring injury, so he didn't test at the combine.
Uh,
We didn't really hear anything about him for like the last like 3 to 4 months.
yeah. Okay. In tier two, the home run picks, we have Tennessee offensive lineman Darnell Wright, Alabama defensive back Brian Branch, Georgia edge rusher Nolan Smith, and Florida interior offensive lineman Osiris Torrance. That's a pretty good list.
I I think if they draft any of those four guys, they're probably ecstatic. It wouldn't surprise me if those are like four of their high, like four of the guys that they're hoping that'll fall there.
Yeah. But like Brian Branch, I feel like is like the single best short-term fit for the Jaguars roster. And you don't really want to be drafting for short-term fits. But at the same time, I don't know, like you go on the spiel about how nickel is like increasingly important in today's NFL. And at the end of the day, like he's just a very good
He's really
NFL
good.
defender
He's
or
really
just a
good.
really good defender.
Like sure, there's the question of how valuable is a nickel compared to an outside corner, but I like Brian Branch more as a nickel than I like any of the corners that are projected to go there. Like I like Deontay Banks a lot. We'll talk about him some, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't like him more than I like Brian Branch. And like you said, that's a starter in the NFL. And Trent Baalke actually has a precedent for taking that kind of player. He took Jimmy Ward, number 31 overall in 2014, and said after he took him that, he's going to be the nickel, that we're drafting him to be a slot cornerback. So he's at least shown that he's willing, I think, to go in that direction. Branch, I don't know how much safety he could play. He could probably do it just because he's such a smart and instinctual player, but he's not
Mm-hmm.
going to be the best athlete on the field. But man, he's a good player. He's a really
Yeah.
good player.
I mean, like end of the day, if the Jags draft a good player, then you gotta be happy. I feel like that's the same with Darnell Wright, who seems like the best offensive line pick, along with um Torrance, but like as high of a floor Torrance seems to bring, or as much of a safe pick as Torrance seems to be, like Wright would be so much more valuable in the fact that he's can play guard, but is mostly like a proven tackle on both sides against SEC competition.
Yeah, no, the mock draft's going to come out in the next couple of days. I probably shouldn't even like reveal who I picked, but for SI's like Fan Nation's publisher mock draft, I had a choice between Wright and Torrance, and I went Wright, like literally for what you said. Like they're both, I think, on the same tier of probably prospect, but one is a tackle who gives you guard versatility. One's a
Yeah.
really good guard, so that just like you said, that's more valuable. But I mean, I think they'd both be really good additions. I think they would both help the running game immensely. And I I think the one who would probably have the most question marks, at least in my opinion, is probably Nolan Smith.
Yeah, me too. Like I was gonna ask, would he be the edge four for you? Or like I just don't know as much about him as the other three guys in this
Yeah.
category, honestly. So that would definitely be like the most wild card pick to me too.
Yeah, no, he is edge four for me. Like in 2013, it seemed like small like edge rushers, like skinny ones, like who weighed like 240 pounds, or like all the rage. Everybody on draft Twitter, loved the super like the guys who look like track athletes on the edge, and that just hasn't been proven to be the case in the NFL. It's as Jim Balky says, it's a big man's game, and that it's true on the edge. Like there hasn't been anybody Nolan Smith's weight drafted in the first round as an edge in a long time. I mean,
Yeah.
Barkevius Mingo weighed more, Vic Beasley weighed more, even if I I don't know. He looked pretty. He would have made the Yahoo All Juice team that draft cycle is all I'll say. Vic Beasley didn't look like the 230-pound guy he was at Clemson, but like small edge rushers, they just do not get drafted, highly. And you look at one of the most recent guys with a similar kind of frame and build to Nolan Smith, Chason, another guy who, he's really small. He doesn't have a lot of length. Nolan Smith is under Trent Baalke's arm length, threshold, the one that we've at least theorized after looking at his picks throughout the years.
Is it 33?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Nolan Smith, I want to say his arms are like, I want to say they're like 22, not 22, Jesus. That'd be like Childs. No.
That's T-Rex.
Yeah, no. His arms are 32 and 5/8. So in terms of arm length, he's 17th percentile among edges, 2%, second percentile in weight, and 15th percentile in height. So he's a smaller guy, but he's a great athlete. He can cover. He plays the run really, really good for a smaller guy. Like, yeah, there's a question of guys are bigger in the NFL, but he was playing in the SEC. Like it's not like he was playing against Pac-12 or Big 12 spread offenses or anything like that. He was playing against big offensive linemen, and he's a great run defender. He's like the prototype 3-4 Sam linebacker, the guy who, he can blitz off the edge, he can stunt, he can drop into coverage, he can play the run. He's probably never going to be your best pass rusher, but he can do a little bit of everything. I think he can be a better pass rusher in the NFL than he was in college. He's really good quickness, really good bend. His strength his speed to power won't work as much in the NFL, obviously, because of his size. But I think the traits are there to be, untapped too. Obviously, though, the red flag is, okay, when are you going to actually draft a pass rusher who, recorded sacks in college? Yeah. Like that's a fair retort after drafting, Trayvon last year. But I would also say, looking at Nolan Smith's numbers right now, he didn't have a season with more than 3.5 sacks. Like he was a Georgia pass rusher. Like everybody gets sacks and nobody gets a ton. But I think just in terms of like Trayvon Walker, I'm not sure there's a prospect in this class who fits better with Trayvon Walker than Nolan Smith. And that's, duh. They played together at Georgia. We're part of an elite defense together. But I mean, Nolan Smith would, allow Trayvon to play inside more because he's somebody who can do that stuff on the edge. He can set the edge. He can drop into coverage. He can be their speed rusher opposite Josh Allen on, third down.
Right.
And, he can work with him on stunts and games and stuff like that. Work well with him. We saw him do it together at Georgia. And also Trent Baalke, obviously, is a big fan of Georgia prospects. I mean, he's taken two in the top 50 in, each of his
back to
drafted
back
the
years.
Jaguars. So I think, Nolan Smith is definitely a name I think worth considering. I know I just kind of went on a spiel about him, but he's a really interesting case study to me because if he works out, he's an outlier.
So, do you think that there might be as much of an impact on Josh Allen as there is on Trayvon Walker if the Jaguars do draft Nolan Smith in terms of just like his long-term status with the team as opposed to like inside outside versatility and like scheme talk?
Yeah, I think that's an underrated storyline, honestly, with their draft needs is that Josh Allen is playing on his 5th year option. And it's you have to figure out what you're doing with him entering next offseason. It's kind of weird. It feels like nobody talks about, like a Josh Allen. Like, am I wrong for that? Like nobody talks about, Josh Allen's contract or how it plays into the future.
Well,
Uh,
is he eligible for an extension right now this offseason?
yeah, you're eligible after your 3rd season.
Okay, then yeah, I agree. It should be talked about more, and
I mean,
no one else has really mentioned it.
yeah, no, he's gonna be playing on his 5th year option. So he's been around for a hot little minute now. Quiet. No, like quietly he has.
Yeah,
You didn't
I
like that, did you?
no, I loved it. Hot little minute. I feel like I don't know. I keep going back and forth with this every month, probably. But if you ask me today, then I would say the Jaguars should extend him, even if he's paid like a top like 10 edge rusher, maybe not top five, but like you got to keep some good players around sometime and not just like the Roy Robertson Harrises that you pick up off the street.
My my expectation is for this to be his final season. That's my expectation. And that's another reason why I'm thinking more and more now edge at 24 because similar to when they took Josh Allen in 2019, they took him when Unique Ngakoue was in the last year of his deal, and they played together for a year. Jesus, a year.
Yeah.
They played together for a year, and then Josh Allen, took over as their top edge rusher the next year while Ngakoue was traded. I think it could be similar to that. You take a guy at 24, pair him with Allen, and then a year later, Allen leaves, and you have another. You need to draft another.
And you're just stuck in the timeless loop. Like
That's right.
just both offensive tackle and edge, like they've just been like recycling those positions, it feels like. And like we're like, I don't know. I would say like the shape that the roster is in is more affected by like the lack of good late round picks or mid round picks in recent years than like just having to recycle
Yeah.
premium positions. But still, like it's tough to see like Jawan leave this year and then potentially to see Josh Allen leave next year.
Fair point. Fair point.
All right, let's go on to the next tier, which is tier three, the solid options. We got Ohio State offensive tackle Dewan Jones, Maryland cornerback Deontay Banks, Notre Dame tight end Michael Mayer, Georgia tight end Darnell Washington, and Iowa edge Lucas Van Ness. I was most surprised to see Lucas Van Ness in this tier just because like I don't really have a personal take on him, but I just feel like I've heard a lot of like top 10 or like top of the first half hype.
Oh no, there definitely has been, and like I could rationalize them taking him at 24 in this class, but he just to me is very far away from being a high volume sack guy and being like just his pass rush like tool set. We talked about not wanting to see bull rush and speed the power every play. I mean that's Lucas Van Ness, dude. I mean,
Yeah.
that the upside to him is obviously he tested really well and he has a background as an interior defender. They actually played him as a 3 technique in 2021. So, he has inside out versatility, but he's another guy who, I can just vividly see them drafting him, standing him up on the edge, and then him bull rushing for 30 snaps a game. And they're just, you being like, okay, what else is there? But
Yeah.
he's a good athlete, lots of length. So I I wouldn't kill him for drafting him. Like I said, he's a solid option compared to you can play him on base downs automatically, and you can't say that about some of the other edges in this class. And like I said, he also gives you inside outside versatility. So there's value there. It's just if anybody was frustrated by the growing pains of Trayvon Walker's rookie year, then he'd probably be another similar case, I think.
All right. I heard that.
You
Dewan
don't want that
Jones,
at all, do you?
you kind of talked me out of it. Yeah. Like now I'm like, all right, tier three, that seems about right. Again, like it's more just that like I've been hearing that like
Yeah.
he's a
No,
top
yeah,
10
no.
caliber player.
It wouldn't surprise me if he goes top 10 in this draft. Like I said, this is a stupid draft class. Every draft class ever will have good football players. This one will have some Pro Bowlers, probably a Hall of Famer here or there, but I don't enjoy this draft class. I didn't enjoy last year's draft class either. So
All
figure it
right.
out
Well,
in college.
of these two tight ends, what's your personal preference between Michael Mayer and Darnell Washington?
Mayor. Yeah.
Okay.
Mayor, he can step in and be a really good pass catching threat right away. I know he didn't wow out the combine, but I don't want to like compare him to Antonio Gates because Antonio Gates was obviously a freak, one of the best tight ends ever. But how he plays is like so similar. Like he wins at the catch point, he wins with leverage and really efficient breaks. I think he's a better tight end prospect than TJ Hawkinson was. I think he is a better pure pass catcher. He can be a red zone threat. He's good after the catch. He can block, and you can right away like you can play both him and Darnell Washington are two tight ends in this class who you can right away play with Evan Ingram. Just the difference between them and why I say Mayer over Washington is Mayer can, I think, automatically give you more in the passing game early on, while Washington is still kind of a work in progress in that aspect.
Right. Man, I feel like that would win the award for just like most fun pick, even if it's not necessarily the best value or anything like that. Just because, not that like I feel like I've probably overstated in the past about how Doug is like a two tight end guy, and like maybe that's just because his best like offensive weapons were two tight ends, and so like he doesn't necessarily like need 12 personnel, but at the same time he's such a good like offensive play card that like he cooks with it, and so it'd be fun to see that.
If they took either one of them, but specifically Mayer, like that would be one of the toughest passing games I think to defend. I mean,
Right.
Ridley, Kirk, Ingram, Mayer, like just you have a lot of versatility there, man. And I mean, Zay Jones is objectively your fifth best receiving option. I mean, obviously he's getting paid more than a guy you would hope is your fifth best receiving option. But I mean, yeah, nobody's complaining if that's the case.
Yeah, that's like the kind of offense that just sort of beats themselves. Where like I feel like the defenses would have no choice but to drop everyone back, and then like it's just about how much like patience you have it with just running in those fronts.
Yeah,
That would be a lot of fun though.
It perfectly describes this class to say that taking a first round tight end would be one of the more entertaining picks.
Okay, in terms of balky pick, is there another player in the class that would be more of a balky pick than Ohio State tackle Dewan Jones?
Nah, he's the biggest dude in the class, dude. I posted a picture of him playing high school basketball. I guess he was like 6'2" when he entered like the 7th or 8th grade or something like that. Like he's an absolute he's a freak, dude. I posted a picture of him playing high school basketball. It's like the kid going up for a shot against him is full vertical, giving everything he has, and then he's just like not even like feet are barely off the ground, just nearly blocking. Like
like looking like his version of Shaq.
He obviously would have some limitations just for how big he is. He probably shouldn't play at the weight he weighed in at the combine as, but I think he's a better athlete than given credit for, just with his pure, size. And then he knows how to use his length and size. His wingspan, he's one of the like longest offensive tackles ever. I mean, he compares very favorably to Trent Brown and Trent Baalke. Go look at some of the comments he's made about Trent Brown before. I mean, he's probably one of his favorite draft picks he's ever made.
Yeah. I almost feel like he like maybe there's a stretch, but like Cam is pretty big. So like I feel like Cam would like sometimes remind him just because of I don't know. Probably not. But let's move on to Deonte Banks. Where would you rank him in terms of like your cornerbacks? Because he's like a name that I've heard and seems like one of the better guys that would be like a first round corner for the Jaguars. But like, what do you think of him?
I'd probably put him around like the fourth or fifth cornerback. He's had a better offseason than Keely Ringo has had. I thought they were like I liked them similar in terms of tape, and then Banks had a great combine. Ringo had a disappointing one, especially based on the expectations for him going into it. So I mean, he's one of the best athletes in the class. Really good outside cornerback who I think can play inside. Didn't play inside a lot at Maryland, but he's a really good tackler, really good blitzer, very physical. The only real question I have is the ball skills because the ball production at Maryland just isn't there. Not many pass breakups, not many interceptions. But if you want like a pure outside cornerback, like to develop so that next year and the next 2 years, you have like two freak outside cornerbacks who can run and have length for days. I mean, it's him and Tyson Campbell would be a fantastic duo for the future.
That'd be awesome. It would definitely be interesting to see like the path that first round cornerback takes, just because I feel like I don't know, cornerback is one of those groups that teams seem wary to invest like too much in, just because I remember like Byron Jones and another corner going to the Dolphins a couple years ago. People were like, "Oh man, this is so sick! Like they're gonna be able to just clamp everyone." And then like one injury later, and like they couldn't cover anyone. So you don't really want to like I don't know overindulge, I guess. But at the same time, like cornerback is up like their biggest need along with edge. Would you say that?
Yeah, yeah. I, I'd probably. It's really tough, man. I don't know which one I'd say is the bigger need right now. I really don't. Like, I'd still probably lean corner just because like you need three starting corners and you need two starting edges, and they have two starting edges, but they don't have three starting corners. But man, it's tough.
All right. The next tier is the interesting options. Tier 4. Clemson defensive lineman Brian Breesy, Oklahoma offensive tackle Anton Harrison, Georgia cornerback Keely Ringo, and South Carolina cornerback Cameron Smith. Oh, and Iowa State edge Will McDonald the fourth. So, like, this is the territory where it's like I feel like none of like the really good guys drop to the Jaguars, and you're almost having to settle a little bit. I
Yeah,
mean, Breesy's interesting because he used to be a top 10 guy. I mean, same with Ringo, you could say, but I don't know. This is a little bit getting a little bit uncomfy.
yeah. Like Brazil would be like he'd be a pure upside pick, and that's why he's as high as he is. But he's complete like projection. Like you have to really trust your defensive line coach. But yeah, he tested well, and like you said, he has the background and pedigree of a guy, potentially worth taking a chance on. But I'm with you. None of these picks, like just looking at them, would be picks that I'm like, okay, wow, that's A plus. Like I that they're in this tier for a reason. Ringo, obviously, like I said, he has his issues. He didn't have a great combine. He's not great in terms of agility. He had a mediocre pro day. Cam Smith had a good combine and has some versatility, but I'm not sure if the NFL is even as high on him as media is. I mean, I saw the Athletic has him as like the 12th cornerback on the board, and Dan Brugler is normally pretty plugged in with where guys are gonna go. And then Will McDonald, super athletic, lots of length, but he's small, he's old, and he played as a 4I in college. Like for people who don't know what that is. I mean, he was basically a defensive tackle at Iowa State, and
Mm-hmm.
it and nobody should say, oh, they ran a terrible defense because they used them like this, because college defenses aren't trying to make projections for guys that the pros clear.
Yeah,
Iowa State runs a great defense, for to stop in the Big 12 offense in the Big 12.
yeah.
That's obviously why they do it. But in terms of like reps he had on tape where it actually looked like what he'll do in the NFL, there are few on there. So that's one where like it's a complete roll of the dice. Trust your coaches on trades.
Like, I'm curious, what do you think? Who do you think would fall the most? Because like Ringo, I could see like, or I couldn't see falling too far just because he's like a freak athlete and like the class isn't great. But like McDonald, as you said, is old and small, and like I feel like old defenders who like can't hold up against the run super well, or like I don't know. I'd be surprised if he went in the first round. And then
I,
Cam Smith, I feel like I've seen at the bottom of, or like a lot lower in mock drafts
yeah,
recently than I would expect.
I think all three are going to be second round picks. Honestly, I
Yeah.
I Ringo feels like every time there's like an article about like scouts or what coaches are saying, feels like he's getting killed. Like I think he's going to be a second round pick still because really good 40, high pedigree. He's one of the youngest corners in the class, but I mean he has his issues. I would guess Ringo gets drafted, then McDonald, then Smith.
Okay. Um, Tier 5, the potential reaches. We got Northwestern defensive lineman slash edge. Oh man.
Yeah, you're good.
Let me try it. Adetomiwa Adebawor. Oh man, I feel bad. I feel like I butchered that.
You did, but you came close.
Okay, we have Georgia Tech defensive lineman slash edge Keon White, Utah defensive end Dalton Kinsiad. Is that
Tight
how you
end.
say that one? Mississippi State corner Emmanuel Forbes, and Texas A&M defensive back Antonio Johnson, and Michigan defensive lineman Mozzie Smith.
Yeah, I would not grade any of these picks good in the first round. I like some of the players. Like I like the Northwestern defensive lineman. I like Keon White. I like Emmanuel Forbes, but I don't like them at 24. Dalton Kincaid, for one, he's an F only tight end. You know, he can't share the field with Evan Ingram. Like you can't play them together at all. So I don't know where his snaps would come from. And then two, he's coming off a back injury and hasn't tested this process. I don't know how you take that guy in the first round. Forbes, I like a lot, but he's one of the lightest cornerback prospects like ever. So again, another outlier. Antonio Johnson, he I would bet a lot of money the Jaguars are going to be higher on Antonio Johnson than I am. He seems like their kind of player, but I'm.
Does he remind you of Rayshon at all, or give me a comp?
Reminds me a little bit of Josh Jones.
No,
I'm
that
being
Josh
serious.
Jones.
I'm being serious. Yeah, yeah.
He had some moments,
Super hard hitter, man. Super
yeah,
hard hitter.
like almost a linebacker.
Yeah, and he was using the slot a lot. Like he was basically like their slot corner, but he blitzed a ton. He played the run really well, but you didn't see anything from him in terms of downfield coverage or ball skills. So yeah, Josh Jones is my comparison.
Oh man, yeah, and like you definitely need like to be able to cover vertically if you're playing in the slot as well as play good run defense.
Does he not sound like a guy they would love?
Oh, he 100% does. I agree with that. So, and it's funny that like the top two like slot early options would be him and Brian Branch, even if there's a sizable tier gap, but they're just such different players.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit more edges because, as you kind of mentioned earlier, the Jags have been doing a lot of research on the position. Um, it was reported yesterday that Auburn's Colby Wooden is going to visit the team, and other edge visits include Nolan Smith, Tennessee's Byron Young, Louisville's Yaya Diaby, Will McDonald, and Lane's Andrew Farmer.
Hey, Georgia Tech, Keon White too.
Oh, and Keon White. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 visits so far. And I don't have like the thing right in front of me, but I feel like they've probably have 30 or 40 reported, probably 30.
Yeah, and they went to LSU's pro day for PJ Ojulari. They went to Kansas State's pro day for Felix and then Dike Uzoma. So they shut up. They obviously have like looked at they've done their homework on this edge class. I think they like a lot of times like some teams like will have needs that seem like super obvious, but they won't think they're as significant, but it definitely seems like the Jaguars have made it clear that pass rush, like
right. I've got like
their focus in April's pass rush to me.
Peterson said at the owners' meetings, I think we've got to improve our pass rush. I think it's vital, particularly on third down. I thought we were good with the run. We just got to continue to get better with the run and shore up some things there. I think the passing game is the area we have to look at and address in the offseason and clean that part of it up. So, yeah, they're happy with the run defense and they need more pass rush. But I agree with you that like all the smoke with the quote and then like their visits and stuff is pointing to an edge pretty early. But even though I said like edge and cornerback would be top two, I feel like cornerback, in my opinion, would be like number one, just because I've seen like how often the secondary has been burned over the years and like how much depth matters at that position. And so like I definitely think Brian Branch or like a solid first round cornerback prospect would be ideal.
My counter would be that maybe they could rationalize that they can get a nickel corner outside of the first round. Like, do you have to spend a first round pick on a slot corner?
Oh, you're like, I'm cool with drafting like a slot guy late, but then like the fact that you didn't bring in like anyone at the position in free agency. I know that you said they already have like a decent amount of bodies at the position, but like when Darius Williams like just like sprains an ankle, then like all of a sudden their defense is like not going to be able to compete against top 12 passing offense or top 12 offenses.
That's fair. That's a good point.
Like,
I'll
I don't
concede
know.
that.
They definitely need depth at both positions. And
Yeah.
so it's definitely very close, but I would just personally like to see them prioritize cornerback.
I think out of this group, obviously big fan of Nolan Smith. I think Yaya Diaby is a really interesting guy. He really explosive athlete. You know, he can fire off the edge. He's flexible. He's somebody who I enjoyed watching his tape. I wasn't a big Byron Young fan. You know, he's an older prospect. He's not overly, bendy. You know, he's got to rely on power, but he's not a giant guy either. And then Colby Wooden, he reminded me a lot of DeJuan Smoot. He's literally a tweener in every aspect, but I mean, show is DeJuan Smoot.
Yeah.
Tweeners can work in the NFL.
Yeah.
He's the fact that they brought him in for a visit. I thought to me was like one of the better like team fit like visits that they've had so far because he can play on the edge, he can play inside and sub packages. You don't want him on. You don't want him as your speed rusher off the edge on third down, but you don't want him inside on running down. So, that literally sounds like DeJuan Smoot. And then
Yeah.
you look at a picture of him, and I mean his build. He looks like he looks like a DeJuan Smoot type of pass rusher. So I think that one makes a lot of sense. And then, I mean, I think Keon White is super interesting, but there are also like red flags. Like he's an older prospect. He started his college career as a tight end, but he's been playing defensive end for the last couple of years. So eventually the project thing can kind of throw it out. Like he was still a defensive end his last year at Old Dominion. So it's not like he just moved to defensive end. So
Yeah.
you kind of wondering, where the production is. He was injured for pretty much all of 2021. So that makes sense to me why they would bring him in on a visit, maybe answer some medical questions. But I love his power. I love his inside out versatility. I think he could be a super interesting guy to kind of add to that rotation. Like just in terms of like physical, like aggressive, imposing edge defenders in this draft, like he's one of them, dude. Like he's an ass kicker.
So all of these guys would be probably like round two-ish, right?
Everybody but Nolan Smith, yeah.
Right.
Uh,
And then like maybe White could sneak into the first, but probably not.
I think White's going to be a second round pick, and Will McDonald could be. I could see him as a first round
Right.
pick.
Yeah.
I mean, McShay. I know McShay mocked him to the Jaguars at 24 a few weeks ago, but he started talking about him as early as like pick 10 in that mock or something like that. And I don't think he's like just saying that, And
Yeah.
Tony Pauline said teams had rave reviews about his pro day, which Bill Shuey was at. He posted an elite, like an all-time great 3-cone, which you would hope at 239 something pounds, but still it's at least an interesting group to me. The only guy I'm not interested in is probably Byron Young. That's just what I saw off tape. I could be wrong. I'm wrong all the time. Like literally, yeah, I know. My draft evaluation, my stuff is wrong all the time. The one thing I think I'm good at in terms of draft evaluation is team fit and seeing how they would fit with the team. But in terms of how good they'll actually be, I'm wrong all the time.
All right. Well, are there any like later names? Like let's pretend the Jags nab Brian Branch at 24 and then like DeJuan Jones falls to 56. Or like is it going to be an edge with one of the first two picks?
Maybe a guy in the third round. Maybe a guy like Eric Hall. Out of Auburn. Maybe Isaiah Foskey falls some. Trying to think even like the guys who would probably be around then. Andre Carter, maybe from Army. I wouldn't take Andre Carter with fifth in the pick, but
no.
No offense to the troops, but I don't think he's that kind of player. Zach Harrison, maybe. Isaiah McGuire.
Zach Harrison definitely does seem like a balky guy. I feel like he's like a popular mock draft guy.
You're going to see Bull Rush for 30 snaps.
I feel like I saw one Twitter clip when he did a spin move, so maybe there's more.
Sure.
Okay, so cornerback, edge probably, then cornerback, then offensive tackle is like the big three for the drafts.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think still like I don't think Josh Wells changes the outlook on that as much as anything else. So I would agree that those are probably their three biggest needs right now.
In terms of secondary needs, we kind of talked about tight end a little bit, so maybe running back, as you
Guard.
mentioned, guard, another corner. Like so if they double dipped at one position, do you think it would be?
They need a double dip in my opinion on both edge and corner. Like
Yeah,
I know they took two corners last year, but
but they were not good. So
yeah,
what's
and like
stopping you from doing it again?
maybe safety. Like I know they have their top three safeties. Maybe they want to get better at number four. Interior defensive line. Perhaps the only positions I think that they shouldn't consider spending a pick on are off-ball linebacker. Like just don't do it.
Uh-huh.
Whatever your desires are, just don't. You don't need to do it. You like figure out if Devin Lloyd or Chad Muma can play. You have Shaq Quarterman as a backup. You're fine. I don't think they should pick a running back. Like I know they probably want one. I can see that very clearly, but you have three decent ones, and obviously Travis Etienne's much better than decent, but you have three NFL running backs on the roster. I think just roll with that for right now. Kick the can down the road for another
You
year.
got too many other holes.
Yeah, and then quarterback, you obviously don't need to take any quarterback.
No, Doug is a big take a quarterback in every draft guy. Like I think he literally wrote an article about it, but I would definitely agree. And then wide receiver, it would be cool to see them take one day three as a special team / maybe could turn into a deep threat or a big body because that's kind of what's missing from the room. But with Zay being paid $7 million to be wide receiver three, they've got a lot already. So
Yeah,
if they skip over receiver completely, I won't be upset.
I really don't think they're going to take a receiver. I really don't.
No.
Which
Okay.
which is wild that one for probably the most drafted positions in the NFL over the last couple of years. If they don't take a receiver, they'll have gone 3 drafts and will have selected one receiver, and he was a 6th-round pick from Georgia Tech. So that'd be a good bet.
Yeah. Okay. I've got one other question, which is looking at the top 24 piece, where would you slot in a trade down? Because I feel like a trade up just makes no sense.
Yeah, if they trade up, they should get hammered.
Literally, there's not one player that would be worth it for.
You should not trade up in this. Obviously, okay, if Jalen Carter falls for some reason, I would trade up for him, but I wouldn't even trade up for Joey Porter Jr. I'm not trading up in this class.
He was the one name I was gonna say that the one realistic name that maybe they trade up for him.
Probably put a tier under Brian Branch and then trade up is right above Nolan Smith and Osiris Torrance. I mean, trade down, Jesus.
Yeah.
Trade down, yeah. So
tier 2, a home run, yeah.
Yeah. And I'd say it's take Darnell Wright or Brian Branch if they're there, and then if they're not, trade down is probably the best case scenario.
Okay. I think that's a good plan. I think we did it, John.
I think trading down smart in this class. I really do, man. The strength is going to be on day 2 and day 3. Collect those picks, and then you just know the New Orleans Saints are trying to trade up with somebody, man.
As hard as possible.
Yeah. So I mean, what they pick 29th, 30th, something like that.
Dude, why do they have that pick?
They the Sean Payton thing, wasn't it?
Oh.
I honestly actually don't know. They have
I mean, that sounds right. I just
they have the 29th. Yeah, they have the 29th pick.
Okay.
Yeah. So
there you go. That's a good tidbit though. It's a good trade down partner.
I mean, so hey, trade down to 29, pick up a 4th, maybe a 3rd, something like that. I think that'd be a win.
Yeah.
I'd rather trade down and get an extra pick than take Nolan Smith, or even as far as much as I like Osiris Torrance. He's a good guard prospect, but I mean he's a good guard prospect.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden the DeJuan Jones and the tight ends and other slightly lower tier guys are all of a sudden slightly better picks.
Yeah, if you could trade down and they traded down and got Darnell Washington, somebody would probably build a statue for Balky that night.
Yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be sweet. All right, John. I think that's it. Maybe we'll do this again next week.
Hey, we'll see. We got on the 17th. So yeah, 10 days from now, off-season workouts start. So, some little juice coming to the football world.
There we go. All right, you got anything else before we got out here, we just got
Ah,
a Zoom warning.
yeah, nah, I sorry for the technical issues this week,
No,
but
we figured it out. It was
it's
fine.
part of the charm. It's part of
It
the
is.
charm.
It happens every single time.
Hey, wouldn't be a Jaguar Report podcast if it went smoothly, and I wouldn't want it any other way. I
Oh,
would I would be incompetent with you and any podcast guest.
same goes, John. All right. Well, I'll see you next week. Until then, thanks for the listen.